welcome to the St. Mary's Commission regular meeting for the 4th of March, 2025. We have quite a few things on the agenda, so my hope is to proceed efficiently through this. And I just want to ask if you would like to speak during the meeting, please come up to the microphone and tell us who you are, whether or not you're a resident of the city. And if you could keep your comments clear, concise, and courteous, I would appreciate that. So the first thing on the agenda for us is appropriation ordinances 1256, 1257, and 1258. Do you have any comments on these for us, Lori? No. I know it's the big ticket item from Napa Auto Parts. That's that tire repair machine.
1257 was just a Delta Dental by itself, and 1258 is tonight with the new one.
Any comments or questions? I would entertain a motion.
Mayor, I'm sorry. I'm trying to. I've moved to approve appropriation ordinance numbers 1256, 1257, and 1258 as presented.
I have a motion. Do I have a second? I have a motion, a second. All those in favor vote aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? And those are approved as presented. The second item is are the proposed minutes from the February 4th meeting, our last meeting. Everyone okay with those?
That's good.
Okay, those are approved. Do I have are there any agenda items that we need to add, Maurice, that you know?
We'll add the electrical one that we discussed earlier, the Neek residence.
What is that, Maurice?
The Neek residence up the north, that's all off of Clay up there.
Each residence electrical.
Yeah.
Anything else? Okay. Okay, so the first item of business, agenda item 5, sorry, number 5, this is A, Lakeview Rezoning Planning Commission. I think probably we all saw the minutes of that meeting. So, the Planning Commission voted not to rezone, so if we have any discussion on that point?
I'd like to make a motion.
I'll entertain that.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move to accept the planning commission's recommendations to deny Mayor Rada's request for rezoning.
I have a motion to accept the Planning Commission's recommendation. Do I have a second?
I second.
I have a motion to second. All those in favor vote aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? For that is approved. Thank you. Second item, property insurance. That was, we had a work session before this meeting. Our agent from Charleston and Wilson just explained our current situation. She'll be back at the next meeting with quotes from another provider specifically for property insurance. So there's no action taken in the meeting and there's no action for tonight. Unless anyone wants to make a comment on that. The next item on the agenda is the Lakeview Lift Station.
The engineer, BG consultant, Pat Cox, sent out an estimate. Now, keep in mind the estimate will probably be hopefully higher than the actual cost, but he put one out. And some of the line items, people always want to pick at them. Tonight's not the night to pick at them. He wants to know, the next step is he's 99.9% done with the plans. When the plans are done, they need to be submitted to KDHE for review. Is it okay if he submits them when they're completed?
That's just a consensus.
Yeah, there's going to be a motion. If there's a consensus, we take the next step, which would be to submit the drawings and plans to KD, I keep wanting to say KDOT, to KDHE for approval.
Is there any commitment if they're approved to proceed?
Well, not on the lift station, there isn't.
It's fine.
Consensus?
Thank you.
Yes, please, let's proceed. Next item on the agenda is the concession stand lease. And really, do you want to comment on that?
So we put an advertisement out last year, and the advertisement says it's good for 1 year, it can be extended for 2 additional years if the operator and the city are in agreement. The operator is in agreement to do it for another year. We didn't ask for any different terms. The person is here if they have any questions, but you just, if there's a consensus to renew it with the Mrs. Iserman, you can make it, we can move on, or you can direct us to put an ad in paper or a website.
Nobody's beating down the door to want to do it.
Well, it's not really something people would necessarily think about, but we did have one competitor last year, but Mrs. Isman won, yes,
But we can extend it for another year, right?
absolutely.
Have we had any complaints?
Extend.
I would like to
Okay.
extend. We'll
Thank
just
you.
extend that.
Same terms as last year.
Yeah.
They don't, you guys have anything to say? No, yeah, I guess that's okay.
Keep up the good work. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is reclaiming Urbanski Park. I get this, I don't know, something tells me someone might have something to say about it.
Or present, there might be something to present.
See that intuition?
We're really just trying to respect your time and give you the best presentation we can. Is this, I don't have my microphone, do you? Okay, right.
That's pretty aggressive. You wanna do that?
Well, I just think it's a little easier for you to see there. So, hello Commissioners, I'm Carolyn Gray, I'm from Wamego, Kansas. I'm here with Sarah Hart, Nicole Cavler, and Adam Hart. We are presenting the Main Street Committee of the Coal Valley Chamber of Commerce. We want to present to you a plan to reclaim Urbanski Park. This project started with Sarah and Nicole planning and brainstorming ideas of the park and how it could be best utilized. Then the three of us spent time at the park observing, measuring the park and everything in it. And this drawing is an accurate representation of the park as it is today. Bertrand Avenue is on the bottom, and the railroad track is at the top. And Sarah has prepared a beautiful mood board back here behind us you can look at later. But there's inspiration photos to get a better feel for the atmosphere that we're trying to create in the park. And I think everybody's familiar with the park, but just in case, moving from the left to the right, we've got the presence of 3 monument there. We've got the fire bell, the fire and curfew bell monument. There's a little history sign here that's not on the map. The shelter house here, the Vietnam Memorial there. And so there is a lot of green grass in this park and not a whole lot of anything else. This park is over 24,000 square feet of prime real estate in St. Mary's. As you can see, it's mostly grass. With our shortage of space in town, it seems we should be using every inch of this beautiful park. If nothing is done to the park today, it still needs some help. At least 1 tree needs to be removed due to pine beetle infestation, and more need to be planted. The soil is desperate need of amending, and the shelter house is in need of repair or removal. The park is underutilized. People only use it to walk from the parking over by the railroad tracks to Bertrand Avenue, very rarely stopping to enjoy the park. During events, people even stay away from the shelter house. They don't usually sit inside or utilize the inside of the shelter house. With all the trees, the park has a welcoming feel. You want to stop by, but when you do, there's nothing to do and there's nowhere to rest. There's a swing close to the highway there. It's on a beautiful day, you almost always see somebody swinging on the swing. And so we believe that that park could be utilized, and we believe that this is the case of if we build it, they will come. we feel like the city absolutely needs public restrooms. It would be nice to have gathering spaces and increased parking. Here's our plan for Urbanski Park. We'll go into more detail in a bit, but this is just kind of the full plan view of it. From left to right, we have yard games here, and then we have a fire pit here. We have a promenade with a little center patio. We have a silo and 3 pergolas, thank you. And we've got the Vietnam Memorial staying with the restrooms behind, and a new sign with the bell and an event sign. Someone might compare Urbanski Park to Riverside Park and question the need for it. These two parks are completely different from one another. Riverside Park is a destination park. We go there for sports games and young children's playgrounds. And yes, families have get-togethers at Riverside, but this really is a gathering park. It's a gathering for families. As you can see, there are no children's playground activities here. It's more of a quiet, peaceful park, or for bands, music, entertaining. And it's really just there and to improve the downtown area, and I think it will completely change the atmosphere of the downtown area.
Could I ask what a silo is?
Yes,
It
you
sounds
may.
like-
So we'll get into, yep,
pictures up here, but they kind of redo them.
Is it a
and turn them
covered
into-
area?
it is a
Okay,
covered
so-
area.
Alright.
And we'll show some close-up pictures of it in a
Okay.
minute as well. Here's the view from the southeast corner of the park. There's a new fire bell sign. There's public restrooms behind the Vietnam Memorial, silo and pergolas, and we would like to request angle parking on Bertrand Avenue since the need for parallel parking no longer exists. And this is from the southwest corner of the park. There's plenty of space for family-style yard games. A fire pit is visible beyond the games, and a gravel lane on the north side of the park is made for food trucks. And a closer look, that sign that I was talking about, the fire and curfew bell sign, is a community event sign on the front with a historical sign on the back that's similar to the historical sign that's there. And we'd like to also add more signage just about St. Mary's history. The sign will be set back from the corner of the traffic for visibility and have low landscaping in the front. Public restrooms are located at the east end of the park, closest to the downtown area, and have remote walking gates at the back entries. So you kind of come around like that, and the gate would be right there to enter into the bathroom. So the men's on this side, women's on this side, 2 stalls per bathroom. The bathroom is centered on the Vietnam Memorial intentionally and has a greenery wall as a purposeful backdrop that will actually highlight the memorial. Don Colson believes the sewer will need to connect at the southeast corner of the park along Highway 24 and can tap into the existing water lines for the restroom. We've also added a hedge of boxwood around the memorial. We all refer to this as the Railroad Park, but it really is Urbanski Park. There's an old plaque saying so that we plan on refurbishing, as well as the bell plaque. In 1953, Sidney Urbanski was the first to donate $500 to the building fund for the new second shelter house, because the first one was in disrepair. This shelter house is now worn and in need of repair or removal. Our plan is to remove it and either replace or cap the existing concrete slab. The large pergola is the same size and location as that existing slab in the shelter house, and would be the location where tables would be most of the time. The chosen tables are heavy-duty outdoor tables with built-in seats that are too difficult to steal, but yet still movable to other areas of the park. Playing second fiddle only to the trees, this 30-foot diameter silo will be the center of attraction for Urbanski Park. You can get a better feel for the atmosphere of the silo creates by looking at Sarah's inspiration photos of what other cities have done with silos. We'll have a distinguished Urbanski Park sign and string lights. Another thought is to place bits of St. Mary's history signs on each post of the silo. We've seen silos for sale in around the $10,000 range, but our dream thought is to find one on sale. We've seen them on Facebook Marketplace, and we just want to call the farmer and say, hey, we'll dismantle it, take it off your hands for free, but we'll see how far that goes. First and foremost, it would be a bandstand. And secondly, a multi-use space for event, food setting, added tables, farmer's market. There's quite a bit of labor to consider with the silo part of this project, but it's kind of the coolest part of the park. The small pergola to the north of the silo is where the barbecue grill will go. This grill will be surrounded by railing and an outdoor cabinet. The pergolas are extensions of the silo, close to but not touching it. They would be constructed of maintenance-free aluminum and have wisteria planted at each of the 10-inch diameter posts. The promenade from the fire pit to the silo is a walk from the fire pit to the silo, a 27-foot diameter patio in the center. It's constructed of Belgard pavers already offered by Joe Sorokas at a reduced cost. We believe that when pavers are installed correctly, they have a much longer lifespan than concrete, and Joe is planning on using 2 3/4 thick pavers on top of a 6-inch bed. The 27-foot center paved circle is multi-use patio where we would expect to have the same outdoor tables as the larger pergola most of the time. Again, these tables can be removed for dancing, gathering, a farmer's market. The gravel inset food truck lane is 150 feet long, allowing multiple food trucks to pull in. When there are no food trucks, it can still be used for parking. A curb would be nice, but it's not currently part of our plan. The west end of the park has plenty of room for family games. We're planning on cornhole, ping pong, a putting green, and bocce ball. The fire pit circle included in Joe Sorokas' 5,000 square foot of pavers is 30 feet in diameter with a 6-foot fire pit. Les Gordon suggests that a metal ring and hardscapes would be sufficient for fire pit protection, and options can be discussed on the possibility of a lockbox with remote access and automatic shutoff. Gas runs along the south sidewalk for the fire pit, and we have the ability to add water there as well. All-weather Adirondack chairs and permanently fixed stone wall seatings encircle the pit. And we have focused on keeping the maintenance of this park to a minimum with quality outdoor materials and being mindful of mowing efforts. We've gotten estimates for most of the big ticket items, and when all is complete, we're estimating that it might be around $350,000 for this project.
On the silos, I don't understand what that is. Is that a grain bin top?
Yep, exactly.
Okay, because I know a place that can make those. I don't know.
Oh, yeah?
I don't know what they cost.
So if we can't get one free, then.
Well, you can have one custom made, I mean,
Uh-huh.
but as long as I know what we're asking for.
Yeah. So not estimated, here's a list of things we haven't estimated yet. Smaller but still quite significant costs would include the silo, the bell sign, and then there's all other small miscellaneous items listed here and a lot of labor. So our ask to the city is, what is your level of interest? How much would you be willing to participate monetarily and with labor? And how should we proceed from here? How do we go forward? Thank you for your consideration, and we're happy to answer any questions.
My first question, we don't own the park, do we?
No,
We're not.
we own the things in the park.
But so is the railroad okay with this?
Well, we haven't communicated with the railroad, but I think the contract is that it's used for
Municipal purposes.
municipal purposes, yes.
So the agreement says whatever's on there can't be turned into real property and taxable to them. If the city is renting it and using it for municipal purposes, it shouldn't be a problem, you know.
We have to check on that though, if we could do upgrades and,
Before you do anything, you need to check with the railroad, but they need to know what you wanna do first,
Yes.
so.
And we did want to make this presentation enough to take it to the railroad, instead of just asking them if we can do something.
And that has always been the purpose of the that park is for the public, so really it's just about upgrading and maintaining.
Any other comments?
You said all in one, or phases, or phase in a number of years, or are you hoping to do it all at one time?
We'd love to do it all at once,
That's what we
but-
were thinking, because one kind of feeds into the next. And the paver and the concrete may or may not be a big project. We're hoping to get help with that, but the pavers is a big project. And then if you have pavers, then the rest seems to be considerably smaller. And the bathrooms are kind of by themselves freestanding, so that could happen anytime, but yet downtown needs bathrooms. So,
Yeah, that much, okay.
whatever we could work out, we didn't have a time frame.
You did, you have a time frame?
We
or
did
you
not
do
have a time frame.
My general comment would be, I think this is part of a broader conversation we're having about parks and recreation.
I just heard that today,
Yeah,
and so I invited Mark to come.
Yeah,
So-
we need to,
Finance.
and we'll get to that discussion later on the agenda, but we've already agreed what we really need is a master plan for the entire thing, of which this would certainly be a part. So it makes sense to me. I think I could say we have interest, probably quite a bit of interest. It's kind of expensive, and it comes out of part of the budget where we don't have the capacity to bring more money in easily without raising taxes, which we don't want to do. So, but that's part of trying to get a master plan and figure out how to fund it. This is great because you've done a lot of nice detailed work that could be of help to the rec advisory committee when we, so my thought would be, not to preempt our later discussion, but that you would work with that group as one of the subcommittees for this particular park. Or maybe all the parks, I don't know. This one for sure is not.
Aside from city involvement financially, are you looking at other sources for financing as well? Are you looking at trying to raise outside money, donations,
Yeah,
or?
we would like to have the community involved in the actual building and, have some build days. And there seems to be a lot of interest with people.
No, I don't doubt you can get labor. I know you can get labor. I'm
Actual
talking about
material.
anybody willing to, put in any money, any cash that you're
So-
aware of yet.
So there aren't a lot of people in St. Mary's who could offer more than labor.
Right.
Um,
I understand.
But we know that we've had a lot of feedback where people are more than willing to help with labor.
And like Joe Sorokas, all of his project was at cost.
Joe
He said
Sorokas was all, yes,
He was willing to
it was
bring that as
a
cost.
very inexpensive bid for that. And he's very excited and very happy to help with all of that labor, however, he still does have to pay his guys to do it. And they're pretty efficient, it sounded like he could have that done in a pretty short amount of time.
Anything else for right now?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't have anything more other than thanks. It's a lot to take in, and certainly I think it's part of a larger project. Take a look at the whole Parks and Rec amenities and options in the city, and then kind of developing more of a long-term plan for all the components, and then working through the funding and like the process, as the process moves forward, right, there's a lot of reference points, and it just takes time, but yeah, this is part of, like you said, kind of the bigger picture that we're gonna be putting together, hopefully sooner rather than later. Thank you.
And I guess kind of moving forward, what would be your thoughts on, is this something that we would get with that bigger picture? And find out what's going on with, I guess, the Riverside Park and and almost kind of collaborate with them and put it together? Or should we still kind of keep it separate?
Well, as I said, I don't wanna preempt unless
Right.
we wanna move to that agenda item now, the later discussion, but yes, they would, what's what we want is a master plan, which would
Master plan.
include all of the parks, all of the programs, all of the recreation areas. So, as I said, this is extremely helpful to have this detailed look at this particular part of the program already.
Right.
Do we have, what's the, so I did just find out about that today. What's the status on that planning part of it? And does it have to be
She just
generally
really wants me to
planned
go
or
to,
completely planned?
agenda item,
Q.
Oh,
Q.
oh, really?
You know,
Okay.
you have to stick around for that.
I-
It gets
okay.
pretty exciting, these meetings.
It sounds like it.
Move it up, Mr. Mayor, I don't care.
Actually, that's okay with me, but to move, I think those are, it does follow naturally, so, why don't we just address the agenda items P and Q now, which are, recreation board, so, agenda item P is ordinance number 1351, which we've discussed, the recreation board, and Q is a separate agenda item, but I think as we're talking about P, we should just, they are connected. So, Maurice amended the, ordinance based upon our discussion of the last meeting to include the, rec director, I'm sorry, is that the correct?
The rec director would be a voting member on the board,
But not the chair.
would be the secretary, could not be chair.
And I don't know that we need to discuss that much further. We had a pretty long discussion last time, and though there wasn't 100% agreement, I think that was, the consensus was to change that. So unless anyone wants to add any more discussion points, I'd take a motion on item P in particular, ordinance number 1351 on the recreation board. Do you need the language in what we're doing precisely,
You
or
could
just
just make a
agree?
motion to approve ordinance 1351 as presented.
Okay.
I so move, Mr. Mayor.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I will second, Mr. Mayor.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor vote aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
No.
So yes, there are 4 ayes and 1 no, so that's approved. And the related agenda item is resolution, this is a draft resolution number 30325, creating an ad hoc park committee. And I'll open that for discussion in a second, but I just wanted to make a couple comments first, which were, we talked about this last time, and I was a big proponent of this, and then as I thought about it, it occurred to me it may be it probably is unnecessary, so Francis is, go ahead.
And I will say, what I was directed to do isn't here. I eventually turned it into just a rec board being the ad hoc board, when I don't think, I mean, it should be forgotten, and you just carry on with your, because it wasn't what you asked for, so.
Yeah, but if you look at Maurice's draft of the idea of having a number of advisory subcommittees, let me try to get to that part of my. Oh, right, yeah. He talks about subcommittees that would deal particularly, so scope of duties, park committee, recreation program review. This is paragraph 6, the subparagraphs A through E. Golf course property, Riverside Railroad and Flats Park, or we'll call it Urbanski Park. Fundraising, donation, and grants. It seems to me that the more efficient way to do this, rather than having some separate committee, is with the newly redesigned Recreation Advisory Committee, to give them the lead on that. These departments make sense to me.
But they can choose however they wanna split it up.
Correct, but I think this is a good recommendation for them. And then our job, because Brent Francis's concern, which is legitimate, is we're not gonna get different output unless we change something. Well, we have changed the rec advisory committee. And now the other part is we need to demand that we have more direct feedback from them. To provide some of that oversight rather than having a commissioner on the board, have them report back. So those are just my thoughts. I don't know if you want to have any other discussion about that. So simply stated, I would prefer not to establish a second park committee, but rather have the newly designed rec advisory board manage this process, but with the clearly defined goal of generating a master plan fairly quickly, addressing all these areas.
Yeah, so I'd say that you would task the rec board with doing a master plan, but we suggest that they break them up in different portions. You have one group of that, just look at the golf course property and different options are there. One that looks at Riverside Park and the flats, one that looks just at the rec program itself and its offerings and all that. And then they each make independent reports and they meet as a whole, but they report to you every meeting so that nothing gets dropped. And you know what they're doing and they're not going down a road that you wouldn't support. That's what I think would keep it on track.
I'm not sure the light's back on.
Can I ask a question on that? Can I ask a question?
You're the,
Would those separate committees have community members on them for input, or would it just be the rec board?
Well, I think that kind of becomes up to the rec advisory.
my
Board.
proposal was to have 5 committees with 5 members on each from the community. And then I just realized that the rec board is already directed to do that. Why not just break them into groups and let them each take on a portion of it? Because there are gonna be people that love to look at the rec program, but I don't care about the golf course property and vice versa. And just find people that are of interest. And then each of the rec board members would have their own committee, and they'd meet separately, and then they'd meet as a group, and then they would report to these folks.
I would like to see members of the community involved in that, but then who would make that determination as to what members of the community would be on those advisory committees?
Well, if you leave it up to the rec board
Rec board.
would decide who's on there. My ad hoc committee would have, you've been making appointments, but the rec board's a cleaner option.
I don't disagree that it's a cleaner option, I wanna make sure that they are putting feelers out and, you know,
Yeah, how would the community know, I guess?
Facebook?
Well, let me ask, I don't want to, I would like the rec advisory board, to be an autonomous, obviously they're reporting to
Right,
it.
I
I'd
know
like
what
to give
you
them
mean,
some authority. I don't wanna micromanage, but but on the other hand, I think that everyone in this board is gonna agree, we want them to bring people from the community in to help. So can we task them with that particular part of that?
I think you can do that.
Okay.
Whatever you want.
ask them, just anything we need to.
I have a quick question for clarification. What's the difference between the park committee and the park advisory?
Well, we were gonna create a separate advisory or a separate board, but we're not going to. The difference would have been, it would have constituted different people.
So we have a recreation board with a recreation director. The recreation director is in charge of programs, and the board is in charge of the strategic vision for recreation. We're tasking that, I'm proposing that we task that board with this project of developing a master plan.
Gotcha, and so you brought up the park committee, option.
The ad hoc?
Mhm.
I brought that.
Okay.
Dude, go ahead, Francis.
So, if you don't mind, Mr. Mayor, I'll kind of give a little bit of history on last couple months. Some of the thoughts we've gone into kind of a Parks and Rec board change, and then options that may be looking forward. So, over the years, there's been an effort to kind of put together a long-term plan for the parks. The Parks and Rec board has been asked to do that. you know, there's been lists put together, different ideas, but it just never was really finished off. And then last year, we had an idea about putting some pickleball courts down at the park. The city commission, like, there's full approval of the idea. We met with Parks and Rec Board, and they did a little bit of work, but the project never moved forward. And talking with the chairman of Parks and Rec Board, I asked him, I said, what seems to be the problem? And I don't want to put words in his mouth, so this is my interpretation. He just said it seems to not function very well, the interactions between the Parks and Rec Board and the City Commission, and then specifically on the bigger projects, just because there are more Parks and Rec advisory on different programs and smaller adjustments, but we are responsible for the budget. So I asked the Parks and Rec chairman, I said, what do you think about changing the Parks and Rec Board to include a member of the City Commission? And the member of the City Commission would be responsible for the communication between the Parks and Rec Board and the City Commission, so that that City Commission member would have the burden of answering questions on why things didn't get done, or have the responsibility of helping the projects continue to move forward. There seemed to be some sort of interest on the City Commission of the idea, so we drafted an ordinance. The ordinance put a city commissioner on the Parks and Rec Board. I think it also made the city commissioner the chairman of the Parks and Rec Board, and he would call the meetings, and he was responsible for communicating back to the City Commission. We passed the ordinance, but there was not a majority vote on the City Commission to fill that role of who the City Commissioner would be on the Parks and Rec Board. And then the majority of the City Commission decided that they did not want a City Commissioner on the Parks and Rec Board. And so they instructed the City Manager to write up an ordinance to repeal the ordinance that we just passed, and make the new ordinance change the Parks and Rec Board to simply include the Parks and Rec Director, who's a city employee. That was the ordinance that was just passed. I voted no, because we're essentially not changing anything. From my perspective, we're going back to the way it was always done and expecting different results. I don't see any different results unless we make a substantial functional change on how we do what we do. So we're kind of at an impasse a little bit, maybe, because we're the City Commission, we're responsible for the budget, we're really responsible for the long-term planning of the city. Yes, we can have advisory boards that can support, but ultimately we have to make the decision. And so the idea of creating or putting a big burden on an appointed board when they don't really understand the budget, have any authority over the budget, I think it's excessive, and it's, I think, asking too much out of a Parks and Rec Board. Really, and this is what I said at prior meetings, you know, if we have a city commissioner involved, we have then somebody who should understand the budget, should understand kind of how the city functions on a long-term plan level, and also can kind of have the responsibility to the city commission and the voters on how to move forward. And I also said that, you know, one of our goals, or my goal, would be to get together, kind of start assembling ideas for the different parks, park areas, and ultimately hire a professional who does this for a living, an engineer, a lot of civil engineers. They do park design, and they take kind of the community input, figure out, okay, here's what you're after, here's kind of looking at some numbers on budget, and he can put together a long-term plan that we can review and start adjusting, and then hopefully come up with something that everybody likes, and develop a funding strategy to move it forward year after year. That's a little bit long-winded, but that's the history. I think that started in November. That's when the idea was presented at our first meeting in December. I presented the idea of modifying the Parks and Rec Board to include the commissioner. And then tonight, we're, I think, back at square one. So ultimately, I think it needs to be very clearly defined, and I think whatever board it is has to be able to do the task it's assigned. And this isn't, you know, we're looking at very large numbers potentially on a long-term plan. I think we do need to hire an engineer to help the city develop that. So I think some of these asks are a little bit more than what I think is prudent to expect out of the Parks and Rec Board to kind of move through the process. So being that we just repealed the ordinance, we City Commissioner on the Parks and Rec Board, I don't know, that would be my answer, Mr. Mayor, is go that route that we just repealed, but I think to just expect the Parks and Rec Board to do all of this effort, I think is unrealistic. So my idea got rejected, so I'm looking forward to hearing the next idea.
Any other comments?
Mr. Mayor, if I may, thank you. I disagree with Commissioner Avercamp on with one thing mainly, that there aren't people in this community that couldn't pull something like this off or couldn't be valuable resources. I think maybe what we're looking at is
I did not say that, for the record, Mr. Mayor, point of order. I did not say that.
Yeah,
Okay,
that
So
is correct.
I don't know what you're
You
disagreeing with me on, because that is not
I
the position.
disagree with Commissioner Avercamp that we need a city commissioner on the board. I think it's a waste of our time. I mean, it's just, the city commissioner would take over the board. I think we have a lot of people in this town. What I think is that maybe the current makeup of the rec commission is not up to the task. Maybe we need to look at getting other people on that rec commission that could do this and could bring these ideas to the city commission on a regular basis. So that's what I would like to see, is maybe we need to look at the current makeup of the board and go from there. I voted for the first resolution, or the first ordinance, and then after some careful consideration, I thought, yeah, we need to do away with the portion of where the city commissioner is on there, because it's just gonna be that city commissioner's board. That's how it would, in my opinion, that's how it would turn out, to be the board of that city commissioner. And he or she would be able to run that board any way they saw fit. So I think we do have people in this community that could bring a lot of expertise, know-how, knowledge. We gotta find them to be on that rec board.
Yeah. Well, the board exists, it has a membership, we appointed them, and we now need to task them. So I understand your concern. The way that we drive change is to make sure that we more directly task them from this board and get reports back. And if we find that that's ineffective, then I think we reconsider whether or not we change the membership of the board. So the ordinance has been passed to add the rec director to the board. I like the ideas within your draft here for the sub duties. And so I don't know if we need to have a specific tasking or a work session where we define very clearly
Well, so
what we want from it. Let me just finish.
Mark is the chairman of the rec board now,
Okay,
and what they're asking you to do is to discuss making a master plan. My draft resolution broke the city up into pieces, and everybody took a different piece of it and had their own committee. It was gonna consist of the rec board members and then up to 20 other people and make a separate committee. But as I went into it, it seemed redundant since we already have a rec board. Now I suggest when you guys meet, you divide yourselves up into groups of one, and then you recruit people to help you with your piece of it. You divide it up, and then you come and explain to the city commission that you understand what they're asking and this is what you plan to do. And if they agree with it, then you can take the next step, which is to start doing what these folks just did and coming up with ideas.
Right, and for example, so, what I didn't mention earlier, which I absolutely agree with, is that at a certain point in this discovery process, we do hire someone to finalize it, but I think that comes after the ideas, which I'm perfectly confident we can find people in the community to come up with because I'm looking at it. So that's, as long as the rec board leverages the enthusiasm and the talent of people in the city, and as long as we are keeping the pressure on your board to come report to us, I think it should work out just fine. And we get that all in what we would like to see, ideally, and then we hire a professional. I think it can work. Very confident it will work. How about that?
And the only thing is, on that special committee I was forming, they had a deadline at the end of the year. And that if they didn't produce it by the end of the year, that committee was dissolved because it's obviously ineffective. Unless the commission extended it for more time. And I think that's something you need to set as a deadline if you're serious about it. And if they,
Right,
if
so
there's,
that's
if
my
they
basic.
can't meet that, then they need to come talk to y'all.
My
at an open meeting.
practical question is, how do we lay out those specific requirements short of something like this? Just have a work session or write a letter?
Well, he's here. You've spoken directly to the chairman. They plan on having a meeting here shortly. The date was wrong in my minutes, wrong month. And I will have these drafted minutes, or we'll have the drafted minutes, and then we give that to them, and,
So that's what we'd like you to do.
if that makes sense.
And that's what I was thinking.
All right, great.
All right. So no one forgets, I'd like that resolution table. That means we'll come back on. the
Items
agenda.
Q,
Yeah.
Yes.
on that.
are there any other comments? Okay.
It's really not, does the rec board still meet consistently on the third Sunday of the month, you know, is that your?
In the process of reorganizing, which we are doing right now, consensus was not to meet Sunday evenings, although there's not a consensus at all. So I think I'm just gonna have to take the bull by the horns and say, this is when we're gonna meet.
Yeah, because I just know that, I mean, it's hard for the public
It's
to
not a
attend those
question.
meetings when it's not.
That's what I think we need to do.
March 8th or 9th, one of the rec directors is in the country but out off the continent, so he couldn't be here tonight. And they want to plan on having a meeting March 8th or 9th. And then that's when
So
They'll
clearly,
decide. Moving forward, it would just be nice if it's consistently, I know we used to meet when I was on it, that consistently
at
every
the
month
risk
the
of,
public.
I'm not a tyrant, but do we have a consensus that we would also like to task you to ensure that you have meetings regularly and make those publicly?
I thought that was the bylaws.
Okay,
It kind of went by the wayside.
well, let's reestablish them then.
It's probably in place, we just need to say.
Good, good.
You might take that.
Is there an exit ramp for any of the rec board people? Like, if we tell them, here's what we're expecting out of you.
if they don't want to be part of the board, they can.
I mean, if,
He wants to know if we want to bring Doge in here and, is that what you're asking?
I don't wanna be on the record.
Well, so they'll have a meeting come up, and that's a question that Mark can ask them, that it's gonna be some more work than you're used to doing. Are you up to it? Yes or no? And if they say no, well, we'd like to replace you with someone that would like to do it.
And we can do that if necessary, like,
No,
or does that mean, what is, that,
They're gonna have to-
I'm not saying that, I wanna dismantle the rec board as is, but I wanna make sure the right people are involved who wanna be involved.
well, they're all in there until their term expires, or they're not reappointed. And to force them off that's
Not forcing, but giving them an option to step down if.
well, that's what he would tell them, that the workload's gonna increase.
Sure.
If you're up to it, let me know. If you're not, we need to make room for someone else.
Years ago, you guys got the job done. I'm talking a long time ago. I mean, I know it's been a long time, but there was a point that I remember where, and that's why I'm against the city commission being involved, because I know we have the people out there that are capable of doing it. We don't need to micromanage the rec commission. We need to hold them accountable and make sure they're doing their job, but I know there are people out there that can do it.
All right, thanks, and I just, in closing, thank you again. This is my exhibit A for proof that this sort of thing can happen. And we just need to do that on a broader scale for all the different, so thank you for your, and what did you call those pictures again?
A dream board?
Dream board.
It's a mood
Mood
board.
board.
That's the new name
So
for it.
everyone look at that, so the mood will become a little lighter again. We'll go back to agenda item F, red, white, and blue. Make that Bob, you wanna take your role? Yes, thank you.
Hey, you don't, you're gonna take your cable tomorrow, grab your cable, leave it.
Oh,
Yeah,
you're
that's
gonna
your-
take the mood board away?
She's gonna leave it and pick it up tomorrow.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't wanna leave your cables here. Yeah. After the red light. Even if it's Rocco was out of the country. When he's in Hawaii, I've been skills. First of all, the time we get and then this, the atmosphere of the island.
All right, if we could, excuse me, we could proceed, please.
Oh, sure.
Red, white, and blue.
The mood board got me. There's a number of items that we'd like to chit chat with you guys about for red, white, and blue. As you guys know, it's the last weekend in June, put on by Experience St. Mary's. And we are here to get the things
I'm sorry,
clear.
I don't think I've ever actually done that before, but, Matt,
It's difficult to hear
Matt,
what he's
Matt
saying.
Harris, do you guys mind, please? I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Wow, it didn't even work. Not gonna bother
You
you.
need a bigger one.
Actually, I still need the rec director here.
Hey, rec director, they still need you. I think, actually, just for the record, he's the chairman of the rec board.
Yeah.
Oh, Chairman, I need it. I asked for whoever was in
Well,
charge.
he's not in town, but are you able to answer any questions about use of the recreational facilities during the red, white, and blue? Or at least understand what their desires are? You mind
Well,
sticking
doesn't this
around?
happen on a yearly basis, you wanna do certain things, and so how,
Mhm.
I haven't been involved in how that gets approved in the past, but
So it used to not be a problem, and then it became a problem, and we're just saying, is it a problem or not a problem?
So Mark, the issue is, I'd asked the rec director to be here, but they couldn't. They wanna have a meeting March 8th and 9th. Yeah, and so the question at hand is, that's when the rec tournament is scheduled that weekend for the 14 and 16, the use of diamonds or whatever. They also wanna have a softball tournament at the same time. And I thought there was a compromise came up last year that didn't get implemented, was that the rec tournament happened, and then later in the night, they use less fields, and they're done by a certain time frame. And then if the tournament is one of these overnight ones, that they could also go. But I thought that the rec board and the rec directors could meet, and in my memo, I asked them if they could invite you, and then you all could throw everything out to see what could be done. Because it'd be great to pull both of them off, if it's
together,
possible. Yeah, well, I mean, one would follow the other,
right?
and that sort of stuff, but I don't know enough about the logistics of the tournaments to know how to wreck back, but, because Rocco's in,
Sure. What
Rocco's
I
in
don't
Hawaii.
want to happen is what happened last year where we got the go-ahead, or we thought we had to go ahead, but then we really didn't have the go-ahead because the person who could give the go-ahead didn't give us the go-ahead.
So
The person who didn't give us, or shouldn't have given us the go-ahead, gave it to us.
the city is part of a group called the Tri-County League.
Yes,
We have one member on that board,
Mhm.
and then that board decides when things go, and where they go,
correct.
okay? So it wasn't the rec director, it was that board, and it was unfortunate, yes.
Is there something specific, Bobby? that-
Yeah, there were, so last year we were told that we had use of the the diamonds.
Okay.
And then last minute, we're told that we don't have use of the diamonds, we have a tournament going on, not even us. I personally don't care if it goes on or it doesn't go on, because I put a lot of time and effort into this last year, and last minute, even if we would have gotten our way, she made a last minute decision to be somewhere else, okay? To where we wouldn't have had a tournament anyway, to where all I'm asking to check this off of our box is, if it's feasible, let's move forward with it. If it's gonna be a lot of time and effort for nothing like it was last year, I don't want to do with it. So just being clear, honest, open, and transparent, to where I would love to come to that meeting, if you could include me in on that, on March 8th or whatever.
Well, that's Saturday or Sunday, I don't
One
know
of
if it's
that-
gonna happen that quick.
Well, that's what he, well, so
That's in 3 days.
when I'd worked with the rec director, this has been going on for about 2 weeks.
Oh, okay, oh,
And
okay.
those were the dates that he gave me, although in my memo I said February, I meant March.
Okay.
So Rocco should be back. If you can, you need to put something together, we need to address it.
Right, and then get a date and.
Work out with him and see if they can be simultaneous. If he can't, he can't. If he can't, then everyone comes back here and everyone pleads their
Yeah,
case.
and we'll need to hear that from you before we can make a reasonable decision.
Yeah.
I don't have any idea what's going on in the
So-
rec.
So that's, the real question is, when is Rocco back?
He'll be back for that meeting. I don't know what exact day it is, but he'll be back. And then Nick will also be there.
Can you just loop me in on the email thread?
Yeah.
And I'll stay up to date on it and make sure that I'm
We'll
at
make
that.
sure you're invited when
Okay,
they have a meeting set up.
Cool.
That's for sure.
Okay,
So that item postponed.
we're good.
there's that item, but then you have a couple other things.
We have a list.
Well, I only see 3.
Thanks, Mark.
So, we have the parade route, street closures, and Chief Sid. I would love for you to, Chief, called me and told me some of his unique causes and concerns on, getting all the cars off on Main Street. And, I mean, we would like to have that happen if possible, so I'll just kind of leave it up to.
Yeah, so just, I guess for you gentlemen's consideration is, so you guys are still wanting that?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
the input as far as what I had emailed you guys about was, this is very difficult to do. We have tried over the span of 3 years, right, yeah, it's been about 3 years. You know, pre-advertisement, I think we even do the notices on the vehicles, it just, with the mix of all the traffic because the event, parking, the notification, people who don't receive them, it just becomes a really hard task where we just can't accomplish it. And then also, leading up to the parade for us is, we're ready stretched thin, every officer for the department basically on duty just to safely manage, guide, and do road closures. So I think it's kind of disruptive, but again, I kind of leave it to you gentlemen to decide. We'll try to continue to make it work the best we can.
Well,
Just kind of for your,
as I recall, your wording was pretty strong, where you said it's just something you cannot do.
yeah.
So if you cannot do it,
Mhm.
then it doesn't matter if we say go do it.
Yeah.
So I think it's better to plan for getting we could put the parade through the route, correct? We just won't have the
Yes.
full.
So then it becomes an insurance problem as well, to where the safety, the parade is moving, and with the vehicles parked on Main Street, you have that little bit of space in between the vehicle and the actual parade that's moving. And those kids in a big crowd get pushed up pretty close to where we don't have space. That's really the biggest problem.
I think that it's worked out the last 3 years. I mean, you guys done a great job trying to get people off Main Street, and then you got the people that don't listen. But, I'd rather have the Main Street 80% without cars, and just have some guys that probably don't speak English or whatever, and stay there, be parked and then not do anything on Main Street. I think that it's for the safety of the children, and also we're trying to make the parade a lot bigger. We're trying to get Fort Riley, the Color Guard as well, and also
That's
things. Yeah,
cool
we're trying to
things.
get a lot of more folks out here, and just having this little space in the middle of the street with all these cars doesn't work out too good. So, and again, I understand you're not going to get everybody on.
Yeah.
And I know that you guys used to call them and all this stuff, but I think that if we talk to the business people around there and they start posting and trying to help instead of us leaning so hard on the PD, that might work out.
Miguel, what'd you do, was it 2 years ago? When did you first do the parade? Was that 3 years ago?
Yes.
That was awesome.
Yep.
That parade was amazing. And I think we were pretty damn close to 100% no cars.
Yeah.
So what'd you guys,
Yeah.
short of, we're towing them, because I'm not in favor of towing
Sure.
anybody. But short of that, I mean, what did you do? Was it the businesses? Was it just word of mouth? How did we go about it? Because,
Notifications, yeah.
yeah, that was, I thought we were pretty dang close to no cars on the road that day, and that was an amazing parade. Best I'd ever seen, and I hope we can do it again, but, yeah, short of towing them, what can we do? I mean, yeah.
Well, I have an idea. So it seems like the bells is the big one, and it could be because of the weather. It's freezing and people are just like, I'm just not gonna move my car, I'm not gonna. I know it's true, red, white, blue is normally huge. So could we try this year, maybe absolutely red, white, and blue and just let bells because Bell seems to be the one that I'm having the most issue with.
Yeah, I mean, that's fine, I mean, we could figure out, I mean, I'd like to kick the can down the road for the, bells, and just focus on the red, white, and blue, because this is the biggest event.
Yeah, yeah.
But,
Because like I said, because thinking back, that's the one that especially, and it could be that is because of the weather, many times it's been pretty cold.
Chili.
Yeah, like I said, that's just kind of.
All right, so we'll do our best.
Mm-hmm.
But if there are cars, I guess.
We're 100%
All
fine
right.
with that.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
we're
you
100%
can still
fine.
have your event.
And we appreciate it.
Okay.
So,
thank you for
we
working
have-
with us, we
yes,
will work with you guys, and I think that if we get the business owners to post something and kind of tell people nicely, we'll have I mean, for the community, it's not for us,
Yeah,
yes.
they benefit to the businesses, so.
While you're still here, I can't remember what was said about the closure of Fifth Street last year. We would like to do that this year. There is no one, so we'd like to close it on the south side of 24, from there to the park. So, we can have that as a walkway entrance and all that, and we've reserved the armory, so there isn't the issue of a wedding going on. At the same time, which we had to have cars moved and all that, so that opens up that parking lot area right there as well for parking to get people away. Another reason for that is because I'm gonna approach Todd Wishman for some golf carts, and we need to have some handicap parking for the elderly that need to get, that wanna partake. That is most of so I counted like 22 vehicles last year that came in through the barricade that I was in charge of. And they were all predominantly older people, that couldn't park away and couldn't walk all the way up. So with that being said, I would like to come up, that's another reason why I would like Fifth Street blocked off, and I'm gonna have some golf carts, because at the very least, they can golf cart on down to the festivities, leave it, we were all over there. I had a fairly large team with me last year, to where we handled the food, the trash, the bathrooms, all that in the entire park. So, we'll be able to handle, kind of shuttling the elderly folk around. I think it's kind of important to get them included in the festivities. So that's a big reason why I would like to close down Fifth Street, and it opens up a lot of parking and gets us away from a pretty large headache.
So on these golf carts, are they gonna have to get the little stickers?
I just have to make sure they're registered.
Make sure they're registered?
So come to the city?
Yeah. I think it's like 25, yeah.
Well, I just wanna say, I mean, you can drive golf carts on the streets, but I knew there's requirements, and I just wanted you to be aware of them.
Even if the street's closed down? Okay, all right, hey. Let's see, so what we would also like to have City Hall opened up again for the bathroom usage for the parade. That was hugely instrumental last year, for people. Let's see.
So basically, everything that we asked for last year.
But we need to ask for it again. I
Well, the
think
question is the
specifically.
dumpsters or the.
Well, so I took your email and laid these points out.
okay.
I then went through the last 2 years worth of city minutes
Okay,
and covered some things.
Oh.
So, it's just a softball tournament postponed till the rec board
Yes.
meeting. Event donation, were you gonna ask for that tonight?
oh, yeah.
Because I have 2,500 in 2023, 3,000 in 2020. So they have a list that includes yours and other stuff. If you would just like to skip to the event donation,
Sure.
unless you were gonna wait.
Yeah, I'd love to hit up on the event donation, and I love the $3,000 from last year. And I mean, these
And you're
pesky
gonna,
tariffs that are supposedly coming down, we gotta prepare for them. I would like to ask for $3,500 this year.
and keep in mind that you're probably gonna ask the city to cover the trash bill or do something different. Cause in your email you had, so it'd be 3,500 and then there'd be another couple $100.
No, I believe we paid the trash bill.
I know, but in your email you had refuse with a dollar sign. And I thought
I
that,
did?
yeah,
With a dollar sign?
Well, dumpsters.
dumpsters with a dollar sign. Well, don't worry about it. So they're
I
asking.
just wanted use of the dumpsters and move down to sit down to the park like we did last year.
So $3,500 they're asking for.
One of the reasons why every year we're increasing our budget about 10% because we're making the fireworks event longer. The first year we did 15 minutes, last year we did 20 minutes, and this year we want to do 25 minutes and a little more elaborate. It's about $1,000 a minute, roughly.
And I'd say there'd be consensus to do that or carry over, you don't want to decide tonight, but
Well, we've approved everything else, right? I mean,
we're getting through this list.
we, okay.
Well,
Well, I
3,500.
mean, we were nodding our heads, but you're okay with shutting Fifth Street?
The parade,
Are we okay
Fifth
with
Street, that's
shutting-
pretty routine.
That's reasonable.
Yeah.
Alcohol consumption in the park?
The restrictions have been lifted
Okay,
for the, they're not posted, so it can be done for.
okay. That's
I think
Uh,
it's just a question of whether or not there's a consensus to donate
$3,500
$3,500 this year, which is a $500 increase from last year.
Yes.
We have a consensus on that?
Yes.
Yes.
I just wanna say that, it's not a bottomless account, and our countywide sales tax fund is probably where this is coming out of. It kind of has a lot of projects already in the works for 2025. So it's not just an easy decision. There's a lot of things going on this year that we kind of pre-approved from last year, some infrastructure projects, some engineering, so it's not an easy nod, but it's not gonna be like every year going up. I get it, everything else is going up too, and it's I'm pumping the brakes a little bit on the contribution. I get it, you all put a great effort in, that's good, but at the same time, it's not just a big bang. It's,
Sure.
we've got a lot of designations for those dollars already, so.
And we're coming up with different funding, avenues within red, white, and blue as well. So, I mean, all the food vendors, we've upped their percentages and all of that, and we're gonna hold them to it this year. So that's a big one, for us as well. So I appreciate it.
And I was hoping, we'll talk about residential speed limits, but maybe we have an opportunity.
Matt, I'm sorry, I can't hear what you're saying.
But all I'm saying is we might have an opportunity to save that $6,200.
Oh, I was telling them about your bill.
Yeah, maybe, if we could do that, that'll help a little. I mean, I agree with you, absolutely, that fund is, we've got a lot coming out of that.
Okay.
So there was a consensus for the 3,500?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank
And the street closure?
Thank you.
No. The dumpsters, so last year, or each year, Tri-County has billed you directly for the toters.
Mhm.
We didn't, and then Bob had some dumpsters. What is it you exactly want, Bob?
Just the use of the dumpsters from just brought down to the park for us, please.
You know what the Tri-County ones, toters?
15.
So they-
Oh, yes, we do.
So-
Yes, we do.
So those are $17 a piece, and that's $255, and they just bill you directly.
Mhm.
So, I'm going through my list, and it's the same as your list. So the dumpsters is to bring the city ones, and then to arrange for, is 15 toters enough? That's
Yes.
what, last year,
Yes.
okay? You
That's
covered,
what we did last year, correct? Yeah, that was plenty.
you covered the bathrooms at City Hall already.
Yeah.
The armory, they've reserved usage from the 26th to the 28th, but the paperwork hasn't been filled out. We usually have, even if it's free, we usually have a deposit of $325. And the paperwork.
get it? I think I sent it already, I mean,
Well,
a month ago.
We spoke, well, we'll double check whatever.
Okay.
We have a temporary fireworks place down there in the bullpen, that was
Yes.
acceptable. Temporary power,
Yes.
they're okay with you guys working with Don, working with them to set up temporary power, if that's requested from you?
Yes, it is.
Okay. So, the one thing I want to clarify would be, so last year you approved a utility bill insert, but we never got it, and we never sent one out.
Mhm.
If you're asking for that this year, Shirley says, she would need it by May 23rd, because
We wanna put one inside.
an advertisement, so it was approved last year, it just didn't get done.
That
So
was-
May 23rd would be the day she would need it here printed off in the
Okay.
boxes. And I would encourage you to talk to her and not just bring something, tell her
Sure.
what you're looking to do, so she knows.
Okay,
And then you've already covered the parking, and that's all I had unless you had other stuff.
no, that is it.
All good. Thank you very much.
Yep.
Appreciate the
Thank you,
work.
guys.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mike,
Next agenda,
Appreciate it.
next agenda item, sewer plant.
Yeah. I didn't turn it off.
Mike, did you want to talk about the, and there was a, cost estimate in the packet,
$105,000.
$105,000.
I do.
Well,
It was sent out,
yeah.
separate.
Oh, no, it is separate, it's on emails,
I have it. There you go.
That's it? You don't have any more? I was gonna give everyone.
They all have it.
Oh, you guys already have these?
Yeah,
I,
we
I
have,
okay.
you said
Oh,
that.
okay.
don't have a paper
Francis.
one, but I don't need
Give
a
that one,
paper.
Francis, I sent it out. It was, Golden.
So my big question for you, I think right off the bat, is how does this, remember when Daniel came in, the
B&G.
Yeah, the engineer. I just wanna make, cause this is pretty hefty. I would just wanna make sure that this is not something that we're gonna do, and then we get that plan that he's working on, and we have to undo it somehow.
This compactor washer should be with the plan for the life of the plant.
So you don't. Is that,
So it will survive the refurbishment and be used in the refurbished plant, what are you asking for?
This is part of the whole, this would be part of the update to the plan, yes. And I thought it was something we could put off, but it's of much importance now. It is it's become a priority.
Thanks for having, so the washer compactor, this is in the same room with the rake screen,
This is part of the rake screen.
and so it's in that kind of southwest corner, it's that,
This is part of the rake screen where the entire city sewer
oh,
goes
it's
through.
the washer compactor.
This takes all the
that
rags.
takes all the rags, okay.
This separates all the rags, and the reason why it's become such importance.
Yeah.
you gonna show us a gross picture,
Yeah, they are gross.
Thought
You hold
maybe
it
I'll
up,
give you
the
guys a.
camera will catch it.
Let's
I
not
hope you, I
broadcast
hope you
this.
had dinner already. But I figured I would give you a glimpse of a little bit of
So this is a problem?
my elbow deep in feces. Yeah, it's a problem.
I think we should approve this.
And it's also, I might add that it's also unlawful,
Yeah, well, I can understand why.
which could create more than $100,000 worth of fees and fines if they find out where it's going, which I'm not gonna talk about here.
So the unaudited carryover, because the financials don't have the audit adjustments, but there's $300,000 in that fund, you know, at the end of the last year. We're still collecting the amount that would have been paid for the sewer plant, which is $233. If you take out $105,000, that's a big chunk. I'm not saying we shouldn't do it, and it would take some months to catch back up, but it's doable. It's, you know.
This is gonna benefit the plant in several different ways. One, it's going to get us out of being in trouble. Because that's something that we definitely don't want. And the other thing is, all of that organic material, AKA crap, belongs going into the treatment system, not going down that chute.
So that, the reason that happened was because it froze. When we had those negative temperatures every year, we end up freezing and, having a problem. But all that which you see is what's been going in another place rather than going into the treatment facility. So it's kind of something that really can't be ignored.
Go ahead.
Mike, can you walk through the quote?
Yeah.
So we're seeing,
One's explosion proof and one's not.
Okay, so I'm not 100% sure. I'm gonna get with B&G and find out for certain whether or not I need to have explosion proof. If I can get away with not having to have explosion proof, I will, but I don't bet on it.
The night Daniel was here in Monaco with BG, the air conditioning or heat, whatever that unit was, that had to be explosion proof. I just don't remember what he said about this, but,
I'm not entirely, there's a good chance that this is gonna have to be explosion proof.
could we set up a conference call with him and then you, me, and Don be on the call too?
Okay. I'll find out for certain if it's really something that we need to do to get explosion proof. If we can get away with not having to do it, I'll do that, but, the reason that, the last time we were talking about the air handler for putting heat in that room. That's another topic that I still need to revisit with McElroy's and figure out. They wanted an inspector to come out and look at the structural integrity of the roof to see if they could relocate the air handler. I don't know, I didn't get with them to see how much that was gonna cost just to get the engineer to come out. But that's another thing that needs to be done at some point to get heat in that room. And also below where the chute goes, okay, where the rags go, there's no heat down there either. So cold air comes up and freezes that chute. And so it could affect the wash compactor, but there's ways to get around that. But the reason they were, the air handler was definitely had to be explosion proof. But I'm not entirely sure that this definitely has to be explosion proof, but there's a good chance that it does. So. But, yeah, so.
Well, I don't think we really have much of a choice on this.
It'd be authorized to go with either one
Authorized
pending,
up to-
pending
yeah.
conversation with Daniel on which one is absolutely required. If we run any problems, we'll just carry it over to bring it back to you at the next meeting.
Well, but it seems like this needs to be done fairly quickly.
Well, I mean, a lot
It
of
definitely
things,
needs to be done sooner than later. It's been something that's been going on for quite some time now.
Can we just authorize up to $105,200?
either quote.
Okay.
But what I'm saying is, even if you agree to it, I mean, do they have one in stock that they'll just have down here?
I didn't ask what the lead time was on any of this.
Yeah, that could be 6 weeks.
I didn't ask.
We'll get it figured out. Thank you. There was a consensus to have him follow up on that quote.
Yes.
With the higher one being $105,000 some dollars.
Do we need a?
If there's a
motion to
consensus.
extend that? Do we have a consensus?
Yes.
Yes, please.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
Take a look at that.
Sorry, go ahead.
For you.
sorry, while you're here, Mike,
Okay.
may I ask a quick question on the HVAC air handler thing? How soon do you think you can knock that guy out, that project?
I never got back to them because I was waiting on a bunch of other things and B&G and things just never happened. So I never got back to McElroy's to find out about getting the engineer in place to get them to come out so that he could okay it. Because I didn't get a price from them yet. They never called me back. So I can contact them again and get the engineer out here. Get the okay that they can relocate the unit to a different part of the roof because where it is now is not okay. It's too close to the edge of the roof. That's why it has to be relocated. So they want to come out to cover themselves, to have an engineer come out and say, yes, you can't put it in a different location on the roof. Then they can quote us, okay, here's how much it's going to cost to install it, the whole unit and everything. So I can get on that also. But the other thing I need to look into with them is, what are we going to do about getting heat down to that lower area also? Because that could also be a problem. And everything has to be explosion proof, so it's not just a matter of putting some heaters in there. So I have to be careful about that.
So the last time Daniel was here, he said that he was gonna give us a report that that basically would sequence some repairs. Does anyone else remember that?
Yes, that's what we
That-
really need.
That we need to follow, if we can set a meeting up with him to discuss the quote for that washer thing, let's ask him that question too, is if that's coming our way, because that'd be quite helpful.
Daniel?
Yes,
Okay,
Monaco.
okay. So I guess I'll get with him and also get with McElroy's and get on that, so.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Yeah.
Next item on the agenda, library rent. Chuck? I think you have some data.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, considering that there's gonna be many, or there's several projects coming up with the library, it seems to be bleeding out of years for expenses. I just did some comparables, from towns, or some of the buildings here in town of what the square footage price is for, different commercial buildings. Now, you'll see for the St. Mary's building, there's two different square footage. I'm not 100% sure which one's correct. One was given by the library for 5,600, and then what Kaiser gave for the measurement of the flooring was 7,611. Currently, I think the rent rate is at $650, which you can hardly get a 2-bedroom apartment for something like that. I just thought with some of the expenses that might be coming up, might be a good idea to revisit rent.
I agree. It just, and not just because of what Francis is mentioning, but this is the fund that,
Chuck?
no, earlier about, we have a lot of things we have to
Oh,
pay
sure.
for out of the general fund, that it's, this is a contributing factor. And it's not, I think what you say in your data is important, we're not, it's not a punitive measure, it's just what is reasonable. And let's hope it's strange that just in the last 2 years, we've had to pay all this money all of a sudden, but it is a very large amount of money, and so it just drew your attention to this. It would appear we are significantly below, but it's reasonable. And you're all seeing the data, correct? As we're looking at this. So it seems to me we certainly ought to raise it. The question is, what's the reasonable amount? Because we don't want to go from something that's certainly less than it should be to going to what we think it should be and going an order of magnitude higher. So I don't know what the right number is. I'm interested in input.
Well, Mr. Mayor, I mean, with the other libraries that are in this network, and it's true, there's two on here that I didn't put on here that were $0 rents. I don't know if those are owned by the library or what. I didn't check into that data, but Alma is 16 cents a square foot, and Esther's is 21 cents a square foot. I mean, somewhere in between there, we're currently sitting at either 9 cents or 11 cents a square foot. So my recommendation, my opinion, is we should land somewhere at least in between there.
Between the 1180 and 1600.
Or just
16 and 21?
16 cents or 21
No,
cents.
I'm looking at the total. Oh, I see, based on the floor, yeah.
I mean, if we were just to go with the going rate for commercial leases, yeah, it would be $3,600 a month, $4,900 a month. I think that would be a little much.
Yes, Mayor. So thanks for doing the work. I agree. And how does the budget cycle for the library work? Because you're probably not prepared, I would imagine, for an increase. Is this something which
Yeah, we just changed it when.
put off till their next budget cycle on a timeline? Debbie, what are your thoughts on that?
I'm no expert on the library budget, but as I understand it, we agreed last year that sometime during this month, we'd ask for you to give us an indication of what next year's lease payments would look like. That way we can get with the two counties involved and see. And you also mentioned earlier about the buildings. There's 4 buildings that are branch libraries and 4 buildings that are minis. The communities with the mini libraries provide those facilities without charge. The other 4, we pay rent. We don't own any libraries.
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Yeah.
You made a comment, Mr. Mayor, that I think is telling of what we're going to be looking forward to. You said in the last couple of years, we've been dumping a lot of money, and that is because, in my belief, this building is getting older, and it's a very old building to begin with, and it's just getting older. And I think a lot of that cost is just because of that. It's getting older, and now I know this may be another discussion for another time, but at what point do we look at, is that building done, served its purpose and no longer capable of even supporting the library, because we're just gonna keep dumping money into it. I mean, it's just gonna, more things are, I know we put a new air conditioner, we put a new, HVAC, whatever, new roof on the building, but you're gonna, as buildings get older, you get more and more cost involved in maintaining them.
We had a conversation several weeks ago that involved the manager and one of your supervisors and the library director. And is it fair to say the consensus was the building was structurally in good shape?
We couldn't see any telltale signs of just a general observers would show. It doesn't mean there isn't problems, but they're not visible.
The other thing that was interesting that day is, since everybody was there, I just asked them, I picked a number, 10 years. Let's go back 10 years to March of 2015 and ask ourselves what has been the revenue in terms of the monthly lease payments versus the major repairs. Now, to be fair, that time frame probably missed the roof replacement, but it did include 2 HVAC units, and we threw the potential flooring contract in there. The city was still above water over that 10-year period. Now, maybe we missed some things. It was just frankly spitballing, but I think we've had a pretty good run up there at this point. But I think the library ought to be treated fairly, and you've got some good data here, Mr. Rickamini, and we'll see what you guys come up with.
Yeah, I'm not at all trying to, get everything we can out of it, but we have to look at it a little bit prudently with expenses that are coming up. And
exactly.
I do think it is a good service for our community, so.
Thank you.
Do we need to find someone to take a look at the building structurally?
Well, if we're about to spend over $40,000, I don't know.
Well, because when we were there, although it's a brick building, whatever, we didn't see the walls buckling. I've been in old buildings where they've had to run steel pipes across them to keep the walls from collapsing. It's just, when you just walk in there, there's nothing that sticks out. It doesn't mean if you don't do an investigation.
I'm
That's
not
what I'm
even
saying, if we
necessarily
should look.
talking about the walls,
Yeah.
plumbing, the electrical.
Oh.
I mean, when were those looked at last, or have they been? That would be what I would be curious to know.
I think the electrical department's in the process of replacing the ceiling light fixtures. And
We're pretty
probably
lights
have
out
a
there.
pretty good idea of what that system is like.
So Francis, I'm sorry, I don't think I answered your question, but my idea was their budget was coming up, they wanted an idea, and so I thought to put together some numbers that we could discuss and then propose to them. That was the idea.
Could we, my thought would be, we find where we want to be at. And I suspect it's gonna be somewhere between, the Alma and the Eskridge number. But that would be doubling right away, or it'd be a sharp increase. And I'm wondering if we would be open to stair stepping it, where if the number is, let's say it's 19
whole thing and see how they react.
It's not really
I'm kidding.
big, just something to consider. I do appreciate the library and everything they've been doing, so, I would like to see them stick around and try them out. I think it's
So the library, it's a mill levy imposed on Wabunsee and Potawatomi County, minus Wamego, and maybe minus Blue Township over in that area.
Yeah, very west end of the county.
So the idea there is it's a combination county system, library system. And so ultimately, they don't pay the bills, it's the taxpayers paying the bills. So if we pass on a rate increase for rent, that just gets spread around Potawatomi and Wabunsee County into your macro budget. So if we increase the rate, the rent, what do we have now, 600, 650?
650.
So we're gonna be jumping it around maybe potentially $1,000 a month, so that's about $12,000 a year minus the 600. You know, that's $12,000 additional property taxes in Wabunsee, Potawatomi County spread over, you know, all the property taxes. It's a very small amount onto Potawatomi and Wabunsee County, but for the people of St. Mary's, with the maintenance and everything, it's a larger amount. So it's kind of what is the proper way to look at it? Because it's not just a St. Mary's service, it's a two-county, that's the system we're working with.
Thank you, I'm glad you brought this up.
So, but I think I'm okay, because even if we do increase it a lot, the library board just turns that budget over to the county commissioners and says, here's what it's gonna be.
It's advice and consent. We meet with both the county commissioners and then they approve the combined budget.
Have you ever had troubles with budgets?
Last year we did.
What was the issue?
There was an issue about the amount of raising the annual budget by a certain percentage.
Oh, the increase in budget request was more than well, that's probably not uncommon. I mean, first for you maybe, but a lot of boards have those issues about budgets increasing too quickly, yes.
But these numbers that you're looking at, you know, there's a fairness in there somewhere. And I think it gets pretty hard to argue that if you're at 9 to 11 cents per square foot per month, and other locations are higher than that, then that's an issue. Now,
Are you asking that they respond by the next meeting, because we only meet?
Yeah.
So carry this over, unless you're gonna do a decision?
Well, I mean, what's the, I just did a quick spreadsheet here. The bounding values is 16, if we 16 cents per square foot up to 21 cents a square foot. The big problem is we don't know exactly how many square foot feet, but I mean, the low would be $900 and the high would be $1,600 by what I'm looking at, if we bound ourselves by 16 to 21. So $1,000.
They're on the side of generosity.
Yeah, I'd say if we're go to $1,000.
Round up.
I mean, by generous to us or generous to I mean, I don't know. I don't know what the right answer is.
So if the idea is to we're talking about 2026, right?
Correct.
And so they'll be able to put that into their budget, submit that to the county, and I think now's the time to make a significant adjustment. And ultimately, right, it's a fairness issue, it's a judgment. But I think one of the things we can be assured of is that we're not going beyond what is fair and reasonable. And we're arguably still under fair and reasonable. So I would be comfortable going up to the $1,600 a month.
You said 15 or 16.
Into that amount. I get the concept of stair stepping it. We do that sometimes, but that's strictly within our jurisdiction. But because it's going to be funded through Potawatomi County, Wabunsee County, and rather than people of St. Mary's incurring that cost, spreading it around to the whole area that it services, I think is justifiable in my mind.
Mr. Mayor, I agree with Ms. Taylor Campbell on that one. I mean, they pride themselves on being a regional library throughout the entire county. I know it's used by a lot of people that don't live in St. Mary's. We are still gonna have to incur the costs of anything that breaks down or falls apart. So, yeah, I don't think a stair step would be a good idea. I think, like you said, they're just gonna pass this along into their county budget, and everybody in the county would have to pay for it.
Okay. I don't disagree. So, by Chuck's numbers, he's looking at maybe 1,600. That corresponds with what I just ran here. That would be if we went up to 21 cents per square foot on the larger square footage. So,
Seems fair to me.
1,600.
And just looking at some of this data right here too, in the library, just showing the daily interactions. I mean, St. Mary's gets used, and again, just another point towards a maintenance upkeep and all that. This gets used a lot more than all the other libraries. But yes, that would be my consensus.
1,600. Do we just take a consensus on that, Maurice, and then give him a planning number?
If he's here, yes, you just come to an agreement and we'll record a consensus.
1,600. We're looking at 1,600 for the rent for next year. Good? Thank you. Next item on the agenda, resolution 0225, master fee resolution of electric rate. We talked about this last time. There were two options, and I think now there's a third.
Well, no, there was one option. Francis asked me to include another option.
Well, we talked about two different rates last time.
Correct.
Now it's 12 and 10%.
And then you agreed to, on 12, and then after the meeting, Francis asked me to draft one that said 10%. So that's why there's two of them.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, yeah, we talked about 12, and that was kind of the agreement. Commissioner Hall asked about maybe not having the increase be as much as the recommended 12% from the rate formula. And I tried to pull some quick numbers on what that would do and went back and looked at the formula again. I would agree that the 10% would be fine. We're not putting the city at risk. 12% certainly is a big increase, so is 10, but I think just if we can hold it back a little bit. Plus, there's the factor of, for some odd reason, the kilowatt hour usage in 2025 was lower than the kilowatt hour usage in 2024. No, I'm sorry, I've got my years off, 2024 and 2023. And that means that the overhead was a bigger percentage of what the sales. I think that was an outlier, and it would be reasonable to say we probably won't see that 2 years in a row. So even if we do the 10%, we might still do fine with the revenue. So wanted to just present it both because I think it's a good idea, the 10% option. And if there's the will to look at 10%, I wanted to have the rates ready to go if that's the route we choose.
One question, Francis, you may have mentioned this last time, but what was the rate decrease between 24 and 23? What was the drop? Because if the usage goes back up, let's say to 3%, and we're at 10%, then would that balance everything out versus going for a straight 12%?
Well, I don't think it's a question of balancing things out. We're gonna have it even with the 6%, as I recall, even with the 6%, we have a carryover. It's just a question of trying to make sure that we cover those future capital expenditures.
Where's the question?
As I recall.
Yeah.
I understand the question. I believe I ran those numbers, the rates, the different kilowatt hours. There's a lot of nuances with the different rates for the different customers, but I can't remember exactly, but I remember running those numbers and looking at it saying, yeah, there's so many variables, but it was mathematically rational. So if we went up to 2023 kilowatt hours and we do the 10%, we'd be close-ish to 2024 numbers, kilowatt hours at the 12%. So yes. But I don't remember the exacts, but I did look at that and it justified the 10% from my perspective.
Even though I'd like to see a 12% increase on my own electricity, I'd be willing to entertain the 10%. I think it's fine, because we were even considering 6%, as I recall. There was an amount carryable, but it was a little risky.
I agree with the 10%.
So could we do a motion on this one?
Yeah, so they're both in the
So-
packet, just say that
We see
adopt
the numbers.
resolution such and such with.
Yeah, I will entertain a motion to approve resolution 0225 master fee resolution at the 10% increase rate.
Mr. Mayor, before that, I do have one thing I'd like to say. And this, just so it is out there and on the record, because I was approached, I was accused that this rate increase was my idea in order to raise funds for the golf course, which cannot be done. And it's not set up that way. So I just wanted on the record, I want everybody to understand that the reason we talk about these fees, increased rates, is for the future, to sustain what we have and to be able to provide services and cover expenses in the future, and not to finance any sort of recreation within the city. So I just wanted to get that on the record. Thank you.
Go ahead.
I could follow up with that. I think that was back in 2004, 5, 6 area. One of the things when you were on the commission then, that you guys restructured the budget to make the utility funds isolated enterprise
Funds, correct.
And that was an excellent move, I think, and really helped the stability of the budget for the city and the fairness of all the utility rates, so yes.
And I'll give credit where credit was due. That was the first commissioner I ever came up with that idea. And it was actually one of the best things that we did in order to, so we couldn't do things like take money out of the electrical fund to pay for other things.
See, the mood board's working. In any case, I will still entertain a motion to approve resolution number 0225 at the 10% rate.
Mr. Mayor, I so move.
I have a motion, do I have a second?
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second, all those in favor vote aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, approved at the 10%. The next item on the agenda, chip and seal street repair. And you're gonna have 3 things in a row, 4 things in a row, Bob.
3 or 4, yeah, busy night. So, yeah, I think we touched on this the last meeting, well, we didn't have one last, but anyway. The meeting we had.
What's the last meeting?
In February. But anyway, we talked about hiring out the chip and seal work, and I went and got some estimate from the company out of, I think it's Wichita area, anyway, Goddard. So, and then I had Marie send you this map. This map is the one I sent him with the lines in it to represent the scope of work for this year.
What percentage of the town is that? Covering?
So it's more than usual because we were so behind from 23 and 24. 23, the truck broke down, we only got about 2/3 of our work. 24, we were behind because we had 2 windstorms, we just couldn't.
But does that represent half? If we did the whole town, it'd be
It's
double?
about 2/3, or not 2/3, 40%?
40%?
Yeah, not quite half.
Okay.
And you usually do what percentage of the town on a normal?
Well, we used to do every 3 years, a third of the town. A third of the town every year, rotated every 3 years. But it's been growing, you know, like this is before Lakeview, you know, all that. And then we've got the other additions that's popped up, you know. So lately, the last 10 years, probably getting them about every 4 years a cycle. So it's about
25%.
Yeah.
So this would be 15% more. And did you say, I think you've said in the past, it costs us about $60,000 a year, you think, to do that?
That what
We do it
we-
ourselves,
We do it ourselves as, yeah, 50,
50,000.
just on materials. Now, that's not
So if we included the personnel cost,
equipment, personnel, fuel, you know.
so this is 3 times that for a little bit more, but we also don't know what those other costs would be. It'd be interesting to know.
Right, and, you know, we can go into more detail come budget season time, you know, this probably isn't the right time of the year to be trying to, you know, come up with that much money in the middle of the year, but our oil truck is still working. I think we can try it this year, you know, see how, by budget time in June, we'll know if it's, you know, for next year. And so this is just kind of an idea of what it would cost to.
Maurice, could you get us a detailed, could you add in all those other factors to get an annual number for if we're doing for what we've been doing? So if he has $50,000, that's just for the.
You wanna know how much we spend each year? Or
Yeah.
how much-
But the 50,000 is just materials, but then if you could add in whatever other factors there are.
Other costs?
So
That
we
probably
could
don't
do
include
it,
labor.
so we could do a really good comparison here to see.
Do you want us to include labor?
Yeah, I would say yes, because
Because when you calculate labor, it's just not.
well, I'd
done.
like to see that separated. I'd like it to be included.
Oh, it'll be
but
itemized,
also-
of course,
yeah, itemized.
but when you count labor, you take not just the dollars per hour, you take a dollar per hour basis for health insurance, retirement benefits, it's called a benefit wage. So like when we paid, these cities to help us with their electrical outage, we paid them their benefit wages. FEMA has benefit wages, so if someone's making $20 an hour, the benefit wage could be 40 depending on their health insurance, so we'll itemize it out though.
Yeah, and then I even, called Bettis Asphalt to get a ballpark figure. We used to do, every year, we just pick out the worst block in town and tear it out and have a 6-inch overlay put in. And, well, the last few years, we've been kind of strapped with the C-clip project, you know, and a big expense with our sales tax money, so we haven't done any since Mount Calvary Road, but that was paid for by the lot sales, so, but anyway, his estimate for a block is 65,000. Now, for them to just come in and lay it 6 inches in, and that's us doing all the tear out and putting in new gravel base, grading it out and everything, just having them come in and lay the asphalt, 65,000 now, compared to just a few years ago, it'd be like 40, 35, 40, so there, you know, we did do a couple blocks that we tore out, put a new base in, put 5-6 inches of milling, chip and seal it, and they're holding up really well. So, that's something, a couple blocks I would like to do this year too. We have all the millings from that C-clip project sitting at the dump. There's like 2,000 or 3,000 tons of millings just piled up down there. You know, just a matter of time, fuel, maybe save a takes a double seal, you know, to get a good start with it. But it's holding up.
So what action do we need tonight on this?
Really none, it's just informational, and if you wanna keep going forward or wait till budget and get dive into it deeper and.
Well, I would like to see those numbers, but I think maybe Nancy said something.
I think you said it while I was doing something different, not paying attention. This quote from Circle C paving and the streets you marked in the city, what percentage of the chip and seal?
40.
This is about.
This quote is, yeah.
Well, you just said that 5 minutes ago, that's why I wrote it down.
Right, what he's referencing is vote for 40% of the town, whereas they usually do 25% of the town.
Well, we was just curious about the total price that was
Yeah.
in here, and if you double it, that'd be 80%. So that would be looking at to see what the cost to do the whole town would be.
If we got on a rotational thing with a company, we could do 25% of the town, 4-year rotation.
And then also, when kind of doing the spreadsheet cost analysis, it's kind of a option A, option B, there's no real. But on that, could you also include all the equipment?
Like roller, the rubber tire
Yeah,
roller.
especially the replacement cost of that, which is 270, it's a.
And labor, we got the labor, we'll do that. We'll just put together a scenario now, we do chip and seal, and we do a block or whatever, then whatever, but, yeah. So you can have a guy at the end that drags it.
Yeah.
Tom.
Actually, what it cost, well.
We'll just break it up, we'll itemize it, because what we don't have is the labor component.
Yeah, so you'd have to include the life expectancy of that truck. You know what I mean?
Well, there's gonna be some.
But we just have to make a guess so that we can
Yeah.
see if this is.
Oh, everything's a
sustainable.
guess, trust me.
All right, good on that. Pitcher's mound,
Pitcher's mound, yeah, apparently somebody was requesting a pitcher's mound on Diamond 5. We can do it, sure, I think the, rec director might wanna be involved with that.
that's an excellent point. I
Because
think he should be.
at one
The
time they
concern
didn't
there though
want
is that,
one.
yeah, because then only that group can use it or something, right?
Well, they bought all those portable pitching mounds to use for different age groups, to movable, you know, pitching mound. And if you have one that's permanent, you really can't use the mound, you just gotta use the
Well,
base.
one of the problems is we have 2 high schools with 2 varsity baseball teams. And right now, we only have 1 permanent mound on Diamond 1. And I think scheduling is what is driving
Well, the
that.
games, they play all their games on Diamond 1, both schools.
They put them all in?
Yeah.
Yeah, but the practice would probably be
Now,
what,
there's been some makeup games that they've had to do on Diamond 5 that they got along fine with, but that was back with Dave Goulart when he was the coach. He didn't.
How urgent was this request? I mean, I have
I
no
don't
idea
know.
what a temporary pitching mound is like.
I had a coach reach out to me regarding number 5. I guess they actually have several games scheduled, varsity games scheduled for Field 5
Oh,
this year, because there's a conflict of scheduling. And, yeah, so that's where the request came in, and I brought it to Maurice's attention, but if that's something we can talk to the, rec.
But it does kind of tie our hands on Field 5 then, if we put a permanent pitching mound in there.
How many other fields could the younger kids play on? I guess there are 5 total, so that would leave only 3 for
2.
softball.
Well,
One's a
one's
T-ball,
T-ball,
one's a
one's
T-ball
T-ball.
field, so 2 and 3, fields 2 and 3.
So half the capacity would be essentially dedicated to baseball. The older
they
kid
can
baseball.
still use it, they just can't use their portable pitching mound, they just have to put a pitching rubber.
They have to pitch off the deck.
Yeah, off the back or front
So you
side
can't
of the
put the
mound.
temporary one in front of the permanent one?
You can, not the portable mound, no, it's too big.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it would, just wouldn't, it won't set
I don't know anything about these temporary mounds, but.
And, yeah, they were purchased not too long ago, they were pretty expensive too, those mounds.
All right, well, I would suggest we send this to the rec
I agree.
director and the rec, they're having a meeting soon. To be one of the items that they.
Bob, are you interested in being made aware of when that meeting is scheduled?
Yes.
I will let you know.
Okay. I will not be available the 8th.
On Sunday?
Saturday.
On Saturday? Okay.
All right, so we'll push that to the rec board. Elm Street sidewalk.
Oh, yeah, so, we were able to get all the trees and stumps pulled out there just before that blizzard in January. So I just, you want me to go after some quotes, sidewalk up to the drive or up all the way that whole block, or? It still needs a little grade and work, but we can get the estimate, get it scheduled, or, I don't know. How far you wanna go with that?
Are there any utilities in that area down just on the 63, between 63 and the duplex drive lane?
Not much. There's a water line right along the curb line that's, Don says is between 3 and 4 foot. He's probably closer to 4 foot, but there's a gas line up for that duplex service line. But we didn't go that far with the tree removal, you know. So everything else is, yeah, we just dug them all out, all the stumps. Nothing there.
Would the property owner, so right now there's a big grade change off the curb. Would the property owner be okay if some of that mound is removed?
Yes. She would be, but we just, you know, we were gonna do it, but we haven't had the weather yet, you know, since the snow, mud. It might still be a while, I don't know.
Do you think if a sidewalk were to go in there, that it could be, enough dirt could be removed to where there wouldn't need to be some form of retaining wall or anything?
I think we could do a sidewalk there with a similar curb for that one side up against that, like a 6-8 inch curb. Kinda like you've seen the sidewalks they did this summer, going up on the corners. The C-clip project, you know.
The reason for the question is if we could get it down to where it's just a simple flat work sidewalk without a built-in curb, it's a lot easier to do that. And so if the commission was open to the idea of having a volunteer type project from that Cedar Tree Lane all the way down to 63, I think it's possible. But if a curb is required, it's probably getting into something that the contractor bid out. But anyway, just wanted to kind of ask the questions to put down the options.
Yeah, it's pretty big hillside there. I would expect it needs something to help hold it, you know.
Just for that first section from 6th up to the
First
duplex
drive.
part, or driveway. Well, I mean, that particular section, I think, is the big safety section. Well, I mean, the whole thing is, the people coming across 6th Street. And I've noticed that, there are often a lot of cars parked on that road now, so, pedestrian traffic is a little dicey right through that, between the duplex on one side and the duplex on the other. So,
It's kind of narrow there, that road street is narrow.
did we, what was the process for the sidewalk on the other end? Did you get bids? Cause there was there was volunteer work with some of your guys there. Is this a different process?
That was just a volunteer.
Okay, right. So you,
I think Francis headed that up.
so you're specifically bidding this because of the challenge of that, okay.
Let's throw on an option, Mr. Mayor. Is to, yeah, get a bid for that section down near 63. And then, you know, we did the volunteer project last fall, I think it was. Seemed to go well. There's interest, plenty of people there. I think the quality turned out really good. And I think there's definitely an interest in connecting the dots. So from Cedar Tree Lane down to the duplex. So, and I'd be happy to, help make that happen if the commission's open to the volunteer project, taking that portion. But yeah, that would be my suggestion is bid out the lower part and then the volunteer group does the connected dots in the middle.
We can at least get the bid, or?
I'm opposed, Mr. Mayor. I think, again, I'll go back to what I've been saying for the last 2.5 years. Until we are gonna do this on a consistent basis, do it the same way all throughout the city. I don't wanna, make property owners pay for some, get volunteer work for some. City pays for everything on other ones, so, I'd just like to go with the current law the way it is, that the property owner pay for it. If they want it, they can put it in.
And I'll say what I've been saying for the last 2.5 years, which is that, I think we need to look at it case by case and see if there's, based upon, traffic level and safety, we make those decisions on an individual basis. But do we have, other than Gerard's, do we have can we at least get put the bid out? All right with that?
Yeah, I'll see if there's.
Okay, so,
There's no consensus.
no, but we're,
We will say,
what's that?
we could say after discussion, city staff was directed to get quotes.
Not by consensus, though.
I won't use the word consensus, but I'll
There
word
you
it in a
go.
way that after discussion.
Oh, that's fine. I mean, I'm just saying, it's not a consensus.
Okay, Armory HVAC. You're almost done, Bob.
Yeah, so, a couple of weeks ago, we had some issues with the furnace, not working on the Armory, and, called Reed out, they're the, company that installed it. And they worked on it all afternoon, and then they came to the conclusion that the heat exchanger is cracked, and they condemned it. So it cannot be used as a heater. I'm sure the air conditioner works fine, but, and this is their quotes, replace it or fix it. Installed in 2011 of July.
I guess my question is how, obviously the.
What's the lifespan left of
Yeah,
it?
because one's a lot cheaper,
Yeah.
but it goes back to the earlier point about things that get old.
Is that the most expensive component of this HVAC, or is there something else? Because when we have air conditioners replaced, Steve DeVader used to say the core, and that was always a giant charge, relatively speaking, but the rest of it could be maintained. Is that similar here, or
Coil, a coil maybe, or something. That's the air conditioning portion of
could there be a core there then?
there's a coil.
A coil? That's what it is, it's a coil, I apologize. So we're still looking at that as a problem?
The air conditioner?
Yeah, the coil.
No,
part of it.
just the heat.
No, I'm saying that could fail next.
Oh,
It could
well,
be another big ticket item.
Yeah, last summer we had one of the fan motors go out on there's 2 units up there for the air conditioner, one fan motor went out. So it was running off of 1 unit for about a month. Yeah. So,
Knee jerk.
I sold it to the repair.
Well, I would prefer just to go with the repair, but I think that's the, okay. So, do we need a consensus on that, or we could just direct them to do it?
Well, so, the issue is that the Reed company is who the city
yeah.
purchased it through, and we do got quotes from them, and they probably are the best qualified in this particular situation. You want us to get other quotes, I don't know if that is beneficial in the situation. We just try a different company if they can do it for $500 less.
These are the people who installed it and who have been doing all the maintenance on it.
So I just don't wanna overlook that aspect of getting other bids. I'm not recommending
If we
it.
were gonna replace it, maybe, I think, but since they're just
Definitely.
basically doing what they already do, maintaining it, it seems.
And we're fine, it's just this 10 grand.
Well,
I
you
just,
can't really use it right now, right?
No.
I mean, I know it's getting warmer, but
we have external heaters. We have heaters in the armory that are
Portable.
portable that are working. So we've got the cold part covered, or the warm part covered by the cold. But my point is, yeah, obviously, if you replace it with a new one, we get quotes for different units. This one here, it's still $10,000, we just didn't want to do it without, you know.
But consensus is okay on this, or?
Yes,
do I have
to
a
accept the low
consensus
quote?
for the- Yeah. Yeah,
Yep. Thank you.
repair. Well, I don't see your name next to anything else, Bob, would you like to,
We did chip and seal,
Run while you can, Bob.
Diamond 5, pitcher's mound, and armory HVAC. We appreciate it.
thanks, Bob.
And just an update also on Diamond Five, they were asking about the batting cage, and, they flew down one of them storms last year, we just didn't get time to replace it, and we're in the midst right now of replacing it with
It flew down
stronger.
again.
No, we put some old street poles up for frame, and there's a half a yard of concrete around each pole, 2 foot. So anyway, I think come Monday, we'll be able to hang it down.
That's not gonna go well. All right, thank you. Next item on the agenda is residential street speed study. Your name, next, Chief.
I guess the only thing left is whether or not contract will be signed.
And I was telling people about your bill that would let the people lower the speed limit. And so there's interest in finding out the status of that.
So current statute says for residential streets, it's gotta be 30 miles per hour or there needs to be an engineering study. And so, there's a bill in Transportation Committee that would allow cities to lower the speed limit to 25 in residential areas without a traffic study done by an engineering company. So it just gives cities the flexibility. There's an interest in the bill. League of Municipalities supported it. We had a hearing. It ended up not getting worked out of committee, so unless it gets amended onto a bill going through the process, it's done for this year. But it's hard to predict the future, but I would say that next year, I would bet it would pass and do the process and come off. So, but for this year, it's dead.
So the question is it worth waiting a year to save $6,200? And of course, we don't know what the result of the study is gonna be, so we could end up spending that money and not be able to make the changes anyway. So, by the way, no, we haven't signed the contract. That's why we want to talk about whether or not we want to sign it, given this.
It's in the package.
Yeah, we have it.
I would like to sign it. I'd like to pay the $6,500, get it done, see if we can get that speed limit down.
I would like to wait till next year.
Just putting lives at risk.
Do you have any comment?
Yeah, I mean, I'm more inclined to get it done. I would rather see the limits go down sooner than later. I mean, I appreciate the work at the legislative level. I hope it becomes law, but I think we're still unsure. So I would lean towards getting this study done to take more immediate action than waiting another year potentially.
How long does the study take?
That one and the one on Second Street, they're hoping to have drafts by June.
And then, so the drafts, but at what point could we take, because we don't know what the recommendations are gonna be, but then
Usually when they release the draft, it's pretty much like the completed product, they just want some discussion, so pretty much June.
If
We
that-
can even move it even earlier, the hitch is school traffic and weather conditions.
And if that's done in June, then we would immediately have the authority to change based upon the recommendation, or?
I believe so.
Your thoughts, Francis?
Just a quick question, Chief. So on the data collection, Tuesday through Thursday, so this is, so the idea is more residential streets. That would be kind of the target goal.
Yeah.
And when taking a look at the streets and the study, that it would just be these 5 locations where they're gonna be testing it.
Mhm.
We have Second Street between Elm and Gideon's Way. And I guess that is, it's not exactly residential, but we do have a pedestrian crossing there. The 8th Street one, that's definitely residential. Palmer Street, residential. Bertrand, between 5th and 6th. So that one kind of caught my eye because it's downtown, already 20 miles per hour. Why, what, is this the Olson recommendation on getting a speed limit there, or what's the reason for that?
I don't know if it's, to get like a, control, you know what I mean? Like maybe how they do their testing.
Control,
Like-
traffic control
It's
device.
like here we know it's 20, and so let's see how fast they're going. It might be something in their method.
Like a control group in an
Yeah.
experiment,
Oh,
they could reference that.
Yeah.
Because it's back, that's 20, US 24, so they probably couldn't change that anyway. Right.
Correct, yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. Maple Street between.
Should know what Maple Street is. It is,
But I'm trying to find.
Might pay, what we pay.
Yeah, thanks.
A single lane, pay,
That's a weird
Wow.
spot, because
like
that,
really narrow across the bridge.
that,
I would pay $20,000 to pay that one.
aren't there dips in that road?
That's the dip road.
Yeah, there are dips in that. They're not gonna get any data, good data on that
I'm
one.
gonna need to point that out.
Maple Street between 4 and 6.
Well, I would like to see a package on
Here's
there.
how dips affect.
Yeah, maybe there's a.
And these are always, there's always a meeting in which it's kind of honed in or kind of like, there's input involved. Just like how we had the meeting for the Second Street. So if there's one, let me write down that we can ask, hey,
Yeah, well, I mean,
Eastbound Apache Street.
yeah,
well,
Not,
that's
not
true.
westbound.
Yeah, I mean,
because-
actually, that whole neighborhood is of interest because there are a lot of people who live there. And, you know, not just because it's by my house, but that Elm Street, because it's a cutover road between 6th and 2nd. That's,
Oh, they fly through.
Yeah.
They fly through, I've seen it now.
so that
Visited
Maple
my
Street is
son.
a weird, anyway. But the point is that we could probably adjust the streets a little bit and still under the same scope of work.
yeah.
All right, Francis, any other thoughts there? You're just looking at the 90%.
other thoughts for now.
All right, so as I recall, we've actually already approved doing this before.
Well, someone needs to sign it. They need to okay you to sign it.
So do we have to do any other vote on this at this point?
I don't know what the minutes actually said, but to play it safe, I would poll the commissioners and see if it's okay for you to sign it. If it's no consensus, then take a vote.
Okay. Well, so far we don't have a consensus. All right, so we got Francis.
Yes.
Neutral.
He's voting present. He's voting present.
Yes, we have, yeah, I think I'll take that as a consensus, so yes, I will sign it.
Okay, there's
But
consensus.
we do wanna make sure that we're sensible about the streets that.
Tweak the streets.
Yeah, but, yes, I'll sign it.
Okay.
Thank you. I didn't help much, but I have seen John sitting out there, and I know he's enjoying this. But it seems as though it might be reasonable to move him up next, and then, so if you would like to,
Well,
I
I'll-
think
let me
we added
introduce-
to the agenda your question of electricity to your house, so if you'd like to come up, then.
I was just gonna give a rundown of the
Okay.
situation. You're welcome to come up.
He'll fill us in.
So in town, lots are typically 75 feet wide, 100 to 150 feet deep. When someone signs up for electric, there's a $200 fee inside the city, a $400 fee outside the city. That pays for the pole if it's needed in the connection. So the distance that the wire and that $200 covers is real short. He owns a property that's outside the city limits, but in the city's electric territory in the ETZ. And the distance from our distribution system to the house is 550 feet. And they're requesting underground. So in town, when we do that install for $200, that's above ground. If somebody wants to do underground, there's an additional charge. The utility superintendent calculates the cost of the wire and that sort of stuff, so labor charge on there. But the numbers are pretty small because we're only talking about 50 feet, 100 feet to bury someone's backyard line. And in this particular one, as I said, it was 550 feet and it goes across some pretty rough terrain. We talked with Mr. Dorbeck the morning before yesterday, and we put together a cost for just the materials of $7,000 approximately. That includes the conduit, the transformer, and that sort of stuff. Let me see here. The city's policy on developments, which is actually, that area should have been maybe platted in a development, is that growth pays for growth. That's a 2005 resolution, basically. But having gone through, having talked with Mr. Neek, whatever, if the cost is $7,000 for the material, I could see where there could be a split of the cost, and then the city do the labor at the city's expense. So it'd cost them $3,500 for the 550 feet of underground and a $3,000 transformer, or $2,500.
So that's basically what we're offering.
Well, I haven't spoken to him before. I spoke to Dorbeck when we talked about spending costs. But because a typical lot in town is 50 foot wide and 150 foot deep, we've never run really into a 550 foot installation. That is above and beyond the 200
So
or
would
400
you like to move your house?
Yeah, it's already built, so.
Okay, maybe that.
So I guess, I know my contractor was still in negotiation with you on that, and I'll leave it up to him to try to
What
talk
we
about the
initially
nuts and
said,
bolts on that.
what we initially said is we'd split the cost, we'd do the material and half the labor, half the material, half the labor. But after talking to him and some other folks, if the city just did the labor part of it, and then the materials it's like $6,800, but just say it's $7,000, that would be a pretty decent deal to have 550 foot of underground put in and a transformer across that terrain. So, if you had anything to say, I just wanted to set it up, like normally we just deal with in-town situations and the power either runs in the alley or out front of the house and it's just a drop,
Okay. So you're saying we would pay half of that?
I was saying that, I think the city has a responsibility to serve the area, but I think the customer who has a 550 foot line should bear some responsibility for it as well.
So obviously I'm open to that. I know that we wanted to talk more about the actual costs, and I'll let John Dorbeck,
Yeah.
the contractor, who take care of all of that as well. I guess, so what you're positing then is, what is the total number for
$3,500 for you,
me?
$3,500 in materials for the city, and any amount of wages that we're not really too worried about because we got projects. So this would be a priority, of course.
Yeah.
But if we go through and do a benefit wage thing, where we paid health insurance and done those kind of numbers, it would pump it up. But it wouldn't necessarily be a fair thing to do. So-
I got you.
So the contractor they've had, John, they've had other estimates in the range of $15,000 or $20,000 for the boring. The issue that we initially had was Don had offered to put a pole and a meter out there. And that may sound unconventional, but the same thing was done to a house that's already out there. We put a pole and a meter, and that guy went 150 foot. So it had been addressed, but the issue the city runs into is say we charge 16 cents a kilowatt on electricity. We gotta pay our wholesale power guy people half of that. So we have 7 cents that we're quote unquote profiting. And then, if you use 1,000 kilowatts a month at 7 cents, that's $70 times 12 is $840 a year. How many years does it take to recoup $15,000? At some point, it's not enough, right? Or too many. So I've kept whittling this down since we've introduced it. So that's what I think would be a reasonable cost, given the circumstances. There are any number of scenarios that you go elsewhere. Some cities won't let you build your house on a lot that big unless it's in the front third, because of these sort of things. So this is what I think would be reasonable. Another alternative is that it butts up against the Westar territory. The city could decide we don't want to serve this at all. The city would have to apply to stop serving it. And I only bring that up is because Westar had been contacted and was planning on doing work in the city's territory. Okay, so I emailed that contractor and said, please talk to our utility superintendent, and they never did. And then they were gonna put a pole up in Guadalupe, which is right on the edge of the territory, and I assume they would go to there somehow. I'm not complaining, I'm just saying it was just weird. So where we're at today is that we believe it's $7,000, he has a list, I gave the commissioners a list, it's $7,000 in conduits and then tubing, transformer, and whatever else there is, in the meter. And it is the best practice to put the meter on the house and not some pole. We were also requesting that since it'd be going up that driveway, that we get some sort of easement. Normally when we install stuff, there's an easement for maintenance.
Yep.
And that wouldn't be a difficult thing to do, but that's it. So I would suggest $3,500, which would be half the material costs, and then the city do the install. I mean, it is our territory, and we don't have a clearly defined policy. It's just not been a common occurrence, given the lots are so small. I hope that makes sense to y'all, and if you're not happy with it, you definitely talk with the folks here now. And
No, needless to say, I'm perfectly happy shouldering some of the burden of the cost. I completely understand that this is an atypical thing. I guess just to set the record straight as far as the whole history of it though, when my contractor John Dorbeck was originally approached the city, he was told that we could have power. Which, and he wasn't told as far as and needless to say, he wasn't necessarily told the context of that. But then back in September, when we were told the outcome of how that power would be given, our electrician, Dave Perry, I wish he was still here to be able to
No, I understand,
let
because
us
of
know.
the
Yeah.
length, there'd be a
Yeah.
voltage drop. And I think you could have overcome that with larger wiring, but I'm not an electrician either. But, so there was some misunderstanding or whatever, but Don had told me some months ago that we put, because just a customer right near there
Yeah.
has it on a pole and did 150 foot of wiring himself.
Yeah.
Okay, so in my mind, it said, okay, that's how we'll handle it, but there was just this disconnect. So, given the history of it and all that, your decision is to have us pay for half the material, which I think is somewhat reasonable, because we can make it back in a short time compared to 20 grand. We would do that, so.
I'm completely open to that if that's the case, if that's what the commission allows. Yeah.
So is that a decision that?
Yeah, so if there's a consensus to have us work with the customer and basically agree, and we know the information was like $6,850. I sent it out in an email. Half of the material cost that we do the install. Because like I said, if we did we can do the job and we'll do it quickly, but I think if we hire a contractor, they would do it quicker. And if we used our hourly wages and benefit costs, the install cost of the labor would be, serious, and it just wouldn't be a fair thing to do. So I think it's just making sense. Am I selling this out too easy?
Are we already outsourcing the labor, or?
No, we'll do it. We have a mini excavator, and I talked to Don a couple times, you know, but like I said, you know, it'll be underground in conduit, and it won't be overhead.
You know, I did have a couple concerns. I know that we were told multiple times that the city of St. Mary's did not know how to do this sort of power. Is that incorrect?
Well, there was that discussion some weeks ago, I was told that, but I just talked to the utility superintendent today, and if it involves digging a hole and burying conduit, I'm pretty sure we can do it. You know,
I don't know how to do power, so.
Well, I'm not an expert on it either, but I talked to people that do it, and I did get that same feedback that you had gotten about where somehow that we couldn't pull it off somehow because of the voltage drop, and we'd have to, because I remember talking to not Don, he wasn't here that day, someone else that said, well, out in the rural areas, they have these amplifier, or whatever, I don't want to embarrass myself, but point being is, Don says we can do it, we'll do it, so.
All right, any other concerns or questions? So we are in agreement on that.
Yeah, and then I did have West Evergy drop a map if he was gonna surrender the territory, it would just, whatever, I just.
Never surrender.
Well, I think it's gonna
We
work
might
out.
wanna change that rate to 12% though.
I was gonna say, you guys just got 10% up on that, so it should be great, yeah.
The easement.
It's in the wrong.
Make sure we get the easement.
Make sure we get the easement, so the easement may be what we did in Country Breeze when the city had that done, it was so many feet on either side of the existing line or something like that, but we're not so worried about it, cause it does go up a driveway for a good set, and by the way, last fall, we did hit their gas line, and we got the KCC to investigate it, right? Well, they did it, and I think we had to pay $500. No, that one was located, we still hit it, because the ground was so hard, our scoop slid into it. Interesting story, they billed John Dorbeck for it. It was about $1,500 when
You
we
thought it
hit.
was pretty interesting, yeah.
So when he called here, and I said that we hit the pipe on your side of the meter, which would be up by the house. He goes, well, I figured it was from the gas leak, and I think I convinced him otherwise. And I went and talked to Don, and Don says, well, they never did bill it for us, so it probably is us. So when he called the gas company, he said, we don't know why we billed him. So that's getting worked out too. But that wasn't us not calling in locates, that was us on some dirt that's pretty hard there that slid off and hit the gas line. So anyway, that's late enough, I'm sorry, we'll get it worked out if it's acceptable, if it's acceptable.
It happens.
All right.
So.
And then I guess as far as timeline goes, we would very much appreciate if timeline happened quickly. We're living there now with no power.
I understand. Don and I are gonna talk tomorrow morning. Will John be back?
I think he'll be back later this week.
Okay.
But I know he's still been in communication.
He called me today on his phone, so we'll let him know. And I'll send him an email after the meeting tonight.
Sure.
And of course, we'll make it a priority.
We really appreciate it. Thank
Yeah.
you. Yeah,
You bet.
thank you guys. Yeah.
All right, next item on the agenda, capital improvement equipment reserve fund. Is this possibly something we can carry about? But go ahead, anyone have any comments on it? I agree with the concept, but go ahead.
Be real quick. So, what I'd like to do is when we get into budget season this year, is to make part of our budget work sessions include discussion on the capital improvement funds and determine which ones we want to utilize. And based on the next few months, when we look at projects with our sewer and our water mainly, and even in the streets, if that looks, whatever that ends up looking like, we come up with a transfer amount estimate to fund a long-term plan. So,
Now, we could have one of those for Parks and Recreation too, correct?
Well,
Which seems like a smart thing.
Mr. Murtha, who was on that board some years ago, did approach the city commission asking that we set one up.
Yeah, that seems like a
Specifically
no-brainer
for
given
the
what we're talking about.
it's mainly just, we brought it up last year, but I'd like to prep everybody that when it comes to budget season, I'd like to really hone in on that and based on a long-term plan, start another transfer.
I think that's a good idea. Now that Chuck is gone, we're up to the last item, I think, the CD renewal. agenda item R.
Thanks.
Should I wait for that?
No.
All right, I have two bids here, one from Caw Valley State Bank and one from Bank of the Flint Hills, for CD number 33107. So this is Caw Valley. Dear Commissioners, please consider our bid for the above described certificate deposit with an annual percentage yield of 4.20% for maturity in 6 months, or 4.10% for maturity in 12 months. So 4.2, 6 months, 4.1, 12 months. Bank of the Flint Hills, same certificate of deposit, 6 month is a 3.69%, 9 month, 4.55%, 12 month, 4.46%.
I'm sorry, did you say 3.69
3.69
and 4.55?
4.55 for the 9,
Oh, for the 9,
9 month, and 4.46
for the 12?
for the 12.
Are we on a 9-month with them right now, on a different one?
Yeah, and we altered the letter so that they can propose whatever they, because this is the first time it's ever, second time it's happened.
Seems like the 9 month is the thing to do these days. It's the popular.
It is.
So, I take a.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we accept the Bank of Flint Hills on CD number 33107 for 9 months at 4.55%.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor vote aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Nope. And that's, yes, well, the 9 month from Bank of Flint Hills at 4.55%. I think you just started your truck remotely, Francis.
That's where Kelsey went to.
All right. Maurice, that completes the agenda. Do you have any reports?
No, I had a lengthy list of them, but another time.
Overcome by them. That having been said,
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn this meeting.
I have a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second? I have a motion and a second. All those in favor vote aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And the motion carries. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.
Who made the motion? Chuck? And who seconded?
Francis.
Francis? Yes. Mayor, that's where we go, so.
This is a long